20 years ago, Jim Perrin was one of Britain's leading rock climbers. Nowadays, he's recognised as the country's finest outdoor writer, an award-winning essayist whose prose has been likened to the past masters of the genre. For this wilderness walk, Jim has brought me to one of his favourite places, County Mayo in Western Ireland. It's far removed from Ireland's big tourist centres and is an area best remembered for its tragic past of famine and emigration. However, there's one place that does draw people here in the thousands, and it brought us here too, the holy mountain, Croagh Patrick. It was an appropriate starting point for a writer like Jim, brought up in the Catholic faith.
It's a big car park, Jim. I'm surprised at the size of this place.
When I was here at Easter, this car park was full then. And they found the body of a woman on the other side of the mountain at Easter who'd got lost in the mist, and she'd been there since December. She'd been on the mountain for 3 months. But she probably went straight to heaven. I mean, it's a good leaping off point for the soul, isn't it? You're a bit closer to the celestial regions.
Oh, you think this will give me some extra qualifications then, if we go up here? And
no, I think it's just height. Just a bit closer to heaven, aren't you, because of the height. I think it's to do with the purgatory of getting up them, actually. Not so much as the closeness of the stars.
Especially the big rucksacks like these.
Because you suffer. Why are we carrying these rucksacks?
Because we're going on our own pilgrimage beyond this mountain.
This is our burden, eh?
Yeah. OK, are we off?
Oh, I suppose so.
There aren't many Jim Perrins around, which could be a good thing. His dog Judy, otherwise known as the Flea, came along too, and had less concerns about the route ahead. Rising over 2,500 feet, the path to the summit of Croagh Patrick is a slog. We're experienced walkers, but for most folk, this ascent is an act of devotion and worship, with detailed instructions to follow.
It's complex stuff, isn't it? I wouldn't remember all this. I'd have to write it down. Oh, we'll never get to heaven this way. It's purgatory for us, Cameron. We've had it.
And this is the man himself, eh?
This is him.
And is this holy water?
Yeah. You've got to bless yourself with this.
Do you? Like that?
That's right, yeah.
Well, you did it 4 times.
That's what you do.
I'll
Sign
do
of
it.
the cross.
We don't actually have any in Britain, do we? Holy mountains as such.
Do we not?
I can't think of any.
You have holy islands, don't you? I mean, Iona and Ascension.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's certain islands. But not mountains, it's different. It's a different thing entirely, I think. Because the island is a community.
Oh, Cameron again. It's all
No.
bushman.
Now, you see, this is because you were taking the mickey down there.
I was not.
Yes, you
You
were.
were.
Just
I'm
that,
taking this seriously.
that slight bit of blasphemy in
No,
your voice.
I crossed myself properly.
Well, maybe it's because I'm not a Catholic.
And I wasn't grinning then.
Eh? Do you think that was some sort of divine intervention?
I think that Patrick knows you're a Pentecostalist and he doesn't quite approve.
Our plan was to climb Croagh Patrick and then the rarely visited Sheafrey Hills. We'd then ascend the Wheelwray Mountains, and if we were lucky, we hoped to get out to Inishturk and the uninhabited island of Cahir.
I wonder how many people have walked up here over all the centuries.
So many centuries as well. And even then, I bet it's pre-Christian. I bet there were people walking up here well before Patrick.
You think so?
I'd say. We're so presumptuous, aren't we, as mountaineers in the late 20th century, to assume that we've got the monopoly on going to mountain summits. People have been doing it since before history.
You've really taken Ireland to your heart, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a country I'm very fond of, and I've got a lot of good friends over here. I come over here as often as I can. It's held on to things that we've lost on, you know, mainland Britain. If you look back through Irish history, there's such an intense and colourful texture about it. You know, through religion, through art, through the literature. That perhaps, you know, perhaps it's always been so. Perhaps this is a more creative nation, genetically, inherently. I don't know. I just know that I enjoyed being here. But it's still, you know, it has that alien quality. It's not my country. I'm a stranger here. And I enjoy that. I enjoy the freshness of it and the unfamiliarity and the difference of Irish society. I think this is like no other place on earth.
Where's the door?
She's here. She's
on-
keeping warm.
oh,
She's getting as close as she can. She's lying in the sun, out of the wind, and keeping warm.
What age is she now?
She's 16. She's a good
not.
old girl. You know why she's
She's
called
not
a
like-
flea, Cameron?
No, tell me.
Because she's small and she bites. She's 112 in human terms,
Well, there aren't many 112-year-olds coming up here.
especially not with red collars on.
Tradition says this is the mountain where St. Patrick fasted for 40 days and nights, an act of worship which culminated in the miraculous.
I have a notion that this is the place from which Patrick cast out his demons.
Oh, really?
I think so. I'm not sure, but I think
And cast them out over there into the quarry.
into that hole.
The lack of being in first station. Walked 7 times around the Cairn of Stones, saying 7 Our Fathers, 7 Hail Marys, and 1 Creed. And the second station is the summit. Will we bother or will we not? Come on. I can tell you look disinclined.
Did you think that? And my conscience was pricking me as well, Cameron. And I was actually trying to remember the words before you dragged me off.
We were undoubtedly the most secular pair on Croagh Patrick. Around us was a community of pilgrims, struggling ever onwards, their souls uplifted by the spectacular surroundings and their spiritual purpose.
This is amazing.
Isn't it? It's an unworldly place.
The church.
It's a great thing now, isn't it? People come up here who would normally not go up a mountain in their lives. And it's such a mountain, it's on the edge of all things, isn't it? And this view below, such space. Great jumping off point for your soul, Cameron.
But we were keeping our feet firmly on the ground. Leaving the faithful behind, our route took us south to the unfrequented Sheafrey Hills, where we'd camp overnight, before dropping down to the shores of the Dúloch. I've always admired the crafted quality of Jim Perrin's writing, but he's never really spoken about his upbringing and its relationship to his work. Jim's passion for the outdoors contrasts sharply with his childhood years in the inner city of Manchester.
It was narrow streets, back-to-back housing, grimy, run-down, very much a tight working-class community with kids playing in the street, cobblestones. The classic northern slum, it was Lowry country.
Did that working class background shape your own perceptions?
It certainly shaped my political perceptions, yeah, it certainly dictated the political party to which I owed allegiance for many years and my, my social outlook, the Communist Party, and my social outlook. And certainly a lot of my writing, I hope, is informed by that political creed, a creed of social justice and social hope.
Do you think you'd appreciate this as much if you hadn't had that experience of your early years?
Probably not. I remember the very first time I escaped from the city, I might have been just 11. I was a bit bored hanging around the house, so I just set off walking to Congleton. And I can remember sitting by a lake and watching the wind blowing the waves against the shore of the lake and just feeling the most wonderful peace flooding in on me. And just feeling very still and very quiet, and all the noise and all the aggression and the torments of the city were very far away.
I get the sense that you maybe didn't spend an awful lot of time with other youngsters your own age.
I didn't have a peer group of my own age. I was very isolated in that way. Well, partly where I live, because the area in which I did live was all pulled down, and my father got a job as a caretaker of an office block in the centre of Manchester. There was no community there at all. But what there was, and this is very advantageous for my climbing, there were these great buildings. And I used to climb all over them at night. I must have known every rooftop and every...
What, were you climbing up outside of buildings?
Oh, yeah.
Like Spider-Man.
Yeah, we're climbing up the town hall and banks and things like that. I'd be arrested. I'd have been arrested as a cat burglar if I'd grown up 30 years later.
Been to the Sheafrey Hills before?
Yeah, I've never been here before. I think they're marvellous.
They're good, aren't they? Not high, but they're quite rugged.
Yeah, no, wild and lonely. And the texture's lovely underfoot. I think these rocks and the flowers in the turf. And the views are just so wide.
Yeah.
Did you know Ireland had so many hills?
No, I didn't. Especially this part of Ireland.
And all those ridges just going on for infinity.
I kind of thought this part of Ireland was all flat and pitted with little lochs all over the place. Like more water in the landscape than land, if you know what I mean. But I didn't expect to see these great upheavals.
Well, you have this perception that Ireland is all bog, and what you don't realise is that some of it's vertical.
It had been a long day and I wanted to camp high on the Sheafreys, little realising that Jim is so fussy about where he lays his head.
So what do you think of this particular campsite?
Well, you know, Cameron, it's got great views.
It's got fantastic views. Does that mean that's all it's got?
Yeah, it's pretty short on facilities, shall we say. It's squelchy underfoot, isn't it?
I wasn't sure why Jim was complaining. Perhaps writers just get more tired and emotional than the rest of us. After all, we were warm, more or less sheltered, and our food was just fine, although I can't speak for the dog. When you camp high on a mountain, it's always a gamble. Today, I'd lost, and doubtless Jim would have much to complain about.
Morning, Julie, how are you?
I'm okay, Cameron, but my tent's falling down on me.
Jim? Yeah? Any fool can be uncomfortable.
But only a true imbecile can suffocate.
Anyway, we've got a brew on for you as soon as you're ready. How's Judy?
Ask her yourself.
Hello, Judy. What sort of night did you have?
Oh, you know, it was running battle with the flea to keep her out of my sleeping bag. Tent collapsed at about 5 o'clock. The rain poured in.
It could have been worse.
Now that was a very stupid comment to make. The flea seemed fine, but Jim wasn't at his happiest, and the next thing I knew, we had parted company. Not bad for two experienced mountaineers, supposed to be good at navigation.
Jim! Hello?
With the weather clearing, I was enjoying the wonderful panorama of the Sheafrey Hills. By myself. I kept thinking about Jim, but decided that being an expert hill walker, he could look after himself. After all, he had the flea for company.
Where on earth have you been?
Well, I shut you off that time, Cameron.
Hey, was there something I said?
No, I got down after the wind and I went to sleep.
You didn't.
I did.
We've got three mountain rescue teams out looking for you.
Oh, well, here I am. I'm all right.
So how's the dog anyway? Is she all right?
Oh, she's all right. She woke me up.
Thank you very much, or Rip Van Winkle could have slept for 1,000 years.
Only
Come on
now.
then, Rip.
Our walk was leading ever westwards. From the Dhu-loch, it was a long horseshoe ridge that would culminate in the summit of Wheel Ray, the high point of our walk. We then dropped down to the Atlantic. The Dhu-loch, or Black Loch, doesn't usually look this benign. It's well named, for here one of the most poignant episodes in Ireland's history took place. During the Great Famine of last century, over 200 starving people died after being refused help by the guardians of the local workhouse.
The death toll during the famine is one of the great tragedies of modern history, and the fact that Ireland was a net exporter of foodstuffs during that time, of grain to England, is just appalling, isn't it? That history of dispossession has resonance right through to the present day.
I've noticed you use this word resonance a lot in your writing.
What you listen to in a landscape.
What you're listening to here are the cries and the wails of people who are dispossessed, people who are starving.
The voices of people, and they're crying out to you. I mean, it's not quite as many people as died in the Holocaust, but it's something towards that order. I remember saying that in a review once, and having a woman who was a daughter of a Holocaust survivor write in and protest about my making the comparison. And it sparked off the most incredible debate in the correspondence columns about equivalence. Had we lived in those times, then we would have been those people.
Oh, this is just wonderful. Go on then, Jude. Come on, girl.
Well done, girlie.
Writing is the only job Jim's ever had. It's a craft he's worked hard at, and today few others can interpret landscape as well as him. But the process of changing visual images into striking prose isn't easy.
Sometimes it's drudgery, when you've got to produce your 2,000 words for that day. But mostly when your language is starting to sing and when the thoughts are just taking shape by themselves. The Laurentian idea of not I, but the wind blowing through me.
As we do this journey, I mean, are you sort of mentally taking notes?
I may be doing so, but I'm not doing so consciously. I'm just looking around me, and the senses, the sensations are flooding in on me, being recorded, being sorted, being stored. So yes, I am, and to recapture those is the process of writing. But just looking and feeling is the crucial first stage.
Well, how about, by the time we get to Croagh Island, could you have put together a few paragraphs that describe this trip, this pilgrimage?
I did think, having got to my age, that I was past all examinations.
No, make it an examination.
Damn.
This is the summit. Let's head across that way to it. I think I'm going to claim this mountain as my own. If I'm not mistaken, it translates as the bald grey mountain.
Big bald grey mountain. Oh, is that lovely or what?
It's amazing when you come to a place like this and you're not familiar with the landscape.
These hills just over here on the other side of Killary, they're the Mom Turks.
The Mom Turks.
They're lovely hills, very boggy on top. And then you go over to the 12 Bends of Connemara, just coming out of the mist. First time I really saw this hill, it was in the moonlight, and it was after a session in the pub down in Letterfrack, in Veldensbar in Letterfrack, with Davy Spillane and Sean Tyrrell and Liam Lewis playing. It was a marvellous evening.
A fair bit of talent there.
And we drove out here in the moonlight. It's full moon in Connemara, and I saw this hill with the mist just quick silvering down off it, and I tell you, I lost my heart to it. And to the woman
I was going to ask you if you were with a young lady. It sounded like it.
Since I saw the look in your eye.
For the final part of our own pilgrimage, Jim was determined to return to an island he'd visited once before, Inishturk. From there, we'd try and get permission to visit the Celtic monastic remains on Cahir. but we weren't sure if we could finish this journey of ours. It very much depended on the fisherman who was supposed to collect us from the beach. Jim's friends, the Heenies.
What time are we due to meet them?
Today.
West coast of Ireland time.
Yeah, or maybe tomorrow. Time to bail out that Croagh, Cameron.
Certainly are. We're a bit concerned about that. That's about 6 gallons you've taken out already.
Yeah. See the bucket being lowered in?
Here he comes now.
He's definitely rowing.
Oh, that's terrific. Oh, yeah, good rhythm. Look at that.
Pulling away.
All haul away, we'll haul away, Joe.
Nice they came broadside on so we can get a nice picture of the shape of the thing. Oh, they're doing that. They must have heard me.
The oars are unique as well. They've got no blades.
I can see that. They're just like big long sticks.
It's definitely Bernard. And I don't know who the other one is.
Oh, that's a nice movement. So we paddle out to there?
I expect we do.
Yeah. Oh, they're just coming in gently.
Hiya, Bernard.
How you doing?
Coming out to you. Are we in here now?
Right, you go in first or shall I?
Oh, you're going first, Cameron.
The flea and water don't go together, so she was first into the boat.
Oh. Sit this way, will we? All right. Good man. Good man. Sure you got the regatta coming up, eh?
We have the regatta coming up on Sunday. We started last year and this is the second event. So bigger event, hopefully.
With lots of colour racing.
That's right.
Excellent. When you think of it, we've been walking something of quite a nice horseshoe from Croagh Patrick, but it strikes me this is the furthest west we'll be going.
Certainly the farthest out, Cameron, isn't it?
Aye.
I always think of west as the complementary concept to east as well. You know, the way in which we think about east as a set of values. I think of west as things hanging on and resisting and flourishing, if you like, preserving. You know, that wonderful book title, How the Irish Saved Civilization, the role that Celtic Christianity played in so-called Dark Ages. I always think of the West as being like that. There was a sort of relic, an exigent culture that thrived all the way along these stony coasts, and it flickered into high moments of civilization.
What's the lookout tower? Is it date from the war?
I think it's Napoleonic. I think it's when Britain feared that Ireland was going to be used as a backdoor for invasion by the French. I'm not sure. I haven't really read up on it.
Yes, it looks quite old.
Just facts. You can ignore those. Just get the feeling of the place. Ignore the facts. They're for disciplinarians. It's wonderful to be back here. When I was told to go back to the mainland when I was here before, I felt a real wrench. I didn't want to leave. Wanted to stay, but then what would you do here? How would you support yourself? And what sort of a burden would you be on this community?
Croagh, our next destination. I'm looking forward to that.
This is a real privilege. Very few people are allowed to set foot on this holy island. Croagh and its early Christian artefacts are jealously guarded by the people of Inishturk. We couldn't believe our luck when they took us across and left us overnight.
We're here. Yeah, good to be here.
The end of a pilgrimage.
Yeah, but not of the journey.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. Ruins, yes, but this looks more than ruins.
There's lots of speculation about these, Cameron. The most likely explanation is that each of the crosses marks one of the stations of the cross. This one up here is just magnificent. The bas relief carving in it is haunting. If you see it from down there, or when the light slants across it, those eyes become really dark and hollow.
Has an aura, doesn't it?
It does. They're powerful. They're so simple. And it doesn't matter, does it, in a sense, what they signify? Their notation it's so strong, isn't it? It's so obvious. You don't have to interpret it, it just is.
It had been the most remarkable journey, travelling through this ancient landscape that few people ever explore. And Jim had not only risen to my earlier challenge, but had captured the very essence of that landscape in his own way.
We find the places we have always known where being is to be more true. So on Croagh Patrick's stony track I hear the talk of those who labour to its crest, watch imminence upon their face as they turn west. These hills crowd the ocean's space, sea fret drowns them. Schiefer's horizon closes down to cushioned sundew pearled with mist, and speargrass carmine-tipped, and rocks the frost has gapped around. On Wheelwray I glimpsed a widening sunlit world, fancied the walls of the presbytery had gone, and an old priest with a voice like flaking ash, his whisky glass to hand, sat at the grass we walked upon. And there came back to me his gift of mind whose faith had gone, who talked of Yeats and Joyce like the falcon chattering to its crag, maybe in some stilling of the wind before it muffled down again that hint of swift and cruel life. What brought me here, threading through the pattern of the hills? Why tease at an embroidery that maybe doesn't signify, just is, as source and spring? Why do we set to journeying when what we seek is rest? Well, here at the end, no answers, except a sky-roofed church, its texture, and this sweet paradox learned to voice to catcher and quartz stone, that in a place apart we most can feel at one.